Dynasty the king.
You know, we live in a very confusing time when it comes to copyright, intellectual property. For example, the term love stinks. Does it belong to the 1980s song by a certain Jay Gellis band? I believe that's how you pronounce it. Or does it belong to the 1999 movie starring Jason Bateman? Tonight, I am very confident after an incredibly disappointing Monday Night Football performance that my two co-hosts are going to try to take ownership of the term love stinks. Gentlemen, it seems like this show has become an opportunity for each and every one of us to remind our friends and our co-hosts how foolish they are with their fantasy football takes. Right now, it feels a little bit like I'm sitting with egg on my face. So I want to turn it over to Dylan right away. Dylan, it's great to see you tonight. I'm only getting through the pleasantries. We don't really have to talk about Monday Night Football, right?
Oh, no. You're not getting out of this one because I can guarantee if Jordan Love would have led that comeback drive and he would have thrown that touchdown and they would have won the game, Davis and I would get on here and you would just gallivant across the screen talking about his moxie, his poise, and how good he is. And so, no, we're going to talk about this. And I'm going to say a little because I know Davis has a lot to say about Jordan Love. But what I will say, I backed you last week and I talked about how Jordan Love, I would take him over Jared Goff season long. I look like a dang fool because there's no shot after this week that I'm doing that. Like, there's no way. Like, they were obviously riding some sort of high coming into the season. I don't know what it was. Jordan Love, he looked good. He looked like garbage tonight, like straight hot garbage. So I don't know what it was. Like, Davis, go ahead and take it away. I know you have a lot to say about it.
No, it just, guys,
you're going to gallivant because we were talking about him last week. So I know you're going to come throw egg in our face.
It's this full circle because I feel like for so long, you guys just get to take victory laps, or as Dylan would like to say, I'm going to dunk on you. It just feels good to finally be right. You know, a week after I say Jared Goff over Jordan Love, and it's like I'm victorious.
Weren't you right last week with Sam Laporta? You projected that, right?
No, yeah. He wasn't talking about Dalton Kincaid.
No, not Dalton Kincaid. He was talking about Laporta the whole time. Right.
Hypothetically
Carry on.
Hypothetically speaking. But no, it's good to see the week after Jared Goff gets you 33 fantasy points and then Jordan Love gets you a 4? Did he get 5, Josh?
No,
or did he stay at 4? No, I think he stayed at 4. And
listen,
guys, I'd love to say
I'd
love to say that he won me a game by his abysmal performance. He won me a game. We're not going to go into specifics because it's not the yacht club, so it doesn't matter. But it's great now. I have an amazing amount of confidence going into a Monday Night Football matchup, and Jordan Love is on the other side because he's not a good quarterback. All seriousness, you see Matt LaFleur does not trust him. He does not try and open up the playbook until he absolutely has to. And Josh, I don't know how you can confidently say that you're bought in, that they believe that he is their quarterback of the future.
Davis, I'll start off by saying you were wondering what he scored in terms of fantasy points. Every league is different. If you had a point per reception or per interception league, I should say, he probably finished a lot higher because he was 16 for 30 with 3 interceptions and only 182 yards, no touchdowns. It was an ugly, ugly game. And Jordan Love very much looked like a first-year starter. The thing that really is going to matter for his value long-term is whether or not he gets a long-term contract. But I said it last week. I think I already made mention of this. The most important stat to me from a narrative perspective, Brett Favre to start his career, 2-3. Aaron Rodgers to start his career, 2-3. Jordan Love following with the Packer greats, 2-3. I just have to ignore what happened on the field because it was rough.
Okay, yeah. That's practical fantasy football, practical dynasty football. Ignore what's on the field. Don't watch the screen. Just tell ourselves it's going to be okay. And just move along.
As long as
impact by how bad he plays.
As long as his stats match a legend, right? Then it's okay, right? Stats are all that matters.
To some extent. No, long term, I believe in Jordan Love, but this was always going to be a first-year prove-it deal. Like I said, if he gets a long-term contract, I believe the Packers are going to continue to build around him. I kept bringing up the offensive line. Max Crosby looked like he was the greatest defensive player of all time, and they were having to get the ball out super, super quick. A.J. Dillon was given 20 carries, but he only had 78 yards. He was the only person able to make plays other than Christian Watson. It was great to see him back. I know I'm taking a loss on Jordan Love, but Dylan, Christian Watson, I know he only had a couple catches, but they were all for super high value, specifically the 77-yard one, and he almost had the touchdown reception to end the game. What was your thoughts on his performance, how good it was for fantasy players to see him back?
Yeah, I think if you're a manager of Christian Watson, you're excited about what he did. Despite what Jordan Love did, Christian Watson looked good. Surprisingly, he looked healthy. He was getting open, and they tried double covering and bracketing him, and he was still burning defenders, which is what you want to see. Like to be that size, 6'4", 6'5", and just burning past. Yeah, it's a nightmare to try and cover that guy. But yeah, I mean, if you have him in fantasy, you're excited about it. I thought he looked good. I thought the only reason he didn't have a big game was because of Jordan Love. Like he missed him on some throws. The one over the middle, he tried to throw late where it got tipped and picked. Jordan Love it looked awful. So you're excited about Christian Watson. You just hope Jordan Love can turn it around, which is weird because as soon as he got his best weapon back is when he started to fall apart. So I don't know what that says.
Yeah, it's a tough question to ask because you would think against the Raiders, this is the thing that concerns me the most. And I didn't think I would be agreeing this much. I was coming ready to defend Jordan Love a little bit more. The Raiders are a plus matchup. I was excited for fantasy output when Jordan Love had the Raiders matchup. It was something that I think every fantasy player was looking forward to. Davis, we don't have to get too much into it. Like you said, if you needed a Monday night miracle, and I know in a league you did, everyone thought Jordan Love was putting up 20 points easy because the Raiders
I didn't think that because he sucks. No, I mean, I've been kind of, but no, I came in as confident as you can to a Monday Night Football game where I just needed him to suck. And I was like, I'm so confident because Jordan Love does suck. And I'm taking a victory lap, damn it, because Jared Goff in Dynasty is more valuable than Jordan Love. And you want him the rest of the season because you're going to continue to see him get pressured and continue to see them have to rely on Jordan Love having to hand the ball off to A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, while Jared Goff is going to be leading an offense. And guys, I just want to briefly touch on Jared Goff again, right? What did I say last week? How many rushing touchdowns were they snaking from him at the goal line? Man ends up putting up 33 fantasy points. So can we just acknowledge sometimes that I win?
Oh my gosh.
Can we just acknowledge times that?
Thank goodness you've only been correct once because the entire show would be spent. You get one. First of all, Jordan Love has a bye in these next 4 weeks, so you were always going to win the bet. No, Jared Goff did look great. Jordan Love didn't look so hot. Jimmy Garoppolo. He's pretty much just Jimmy Garoppolo at this point in his career. There's not much to say.
Yeah.
He's a back-end QB2. The dynasty value is still a question mark, even though he has a longer-term contract with the Raiders. I don't trust it. What about Jakobi Meyers outscoring Devontae Adams? Davis, going back to you, that knowing your matchup, you had essentially Jakobi Meyers versus Jordan Love. You needed a wide receiver to outscore a quarterback in a 6-point touchdown league. That seemed improbable, but Jakobi Meyers is having his best fantasy season ever on the Raiders.
That was the best second round pick that I've ever spent, Dylan. I just want to thank you in the Yacht Club. Sent Dylan a second for Jakobi Meyers because I saw the breakout before it started happening. And granted, it's not even that he wasn't having it when he was on the Patriots. He was a viable fantasy wide receiver. You're looking at like wide receiver 2, probably back end wide receiver 2 production. But to spend a second round pick to get a guy that's getting hyper targeted, out targeting Devontae Adams because they're double teaming him. So Jimmy G's just going to throw to his first read, which is the guy that's in single coverage. So going to Jakobi Meyers, I mean, that to me, this is going to sound crazy, Dylan, and it's probably going to piss you off, and I love it. I'm thinking Jakobi Meyers over Nico Collins the rest of the season. And I'm so here for that. And I honestly think Jakobi Meyers is the better wide receiver as well.
No, and here's why you're wrong.
Tell me.
We just talked about how bad Jimmy Garoppolo is. Jimmy Garoppolo will not sustain this. There's going to come a point where he either gets hurt and it's Aiden O'Connell or Hoyer, or he's just going to crap the bed like we've seen multiple times. So
yeah,
you saying that is crazy because I'm taking Nico Collins. My whole argument around Nico Collins last week, Nico Collins attached to a CJ Stroud over that 100 times out of 100. So I don't blame you. I see you're riding the high of his production, but it's going to come crashing down eventually. It's not going to be sustainable.
Davis is riding the high of getting something remotely correct on his show. And
he's just doubling down on everything.
He's
hold on a second.
And by the way, I said it was going to be sunny tomorrow. That's literally what you're saying.
Right, it is. Jakobi Meyers, 10 targets in 3 out of his 4 games that he's played. Just saying. And yes, I get that they're Jimmy G targets, but still they're 10 targets plus. So
Jimmy G likes throwing it underneath. Jakobi Meyers is older in his career. Nico Collins has long-term value. At the very least, you have to like Nico Collins' upside in the future more than Jakobi Meyers in the twilight of his career. We're going to move on from the Monday Night Football recap, take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the wide receivers whose performances spoke the most to us about not just the dynasty value of the player, but also perhaps the offense as a whole. Stay tuned. Week 5 was all about the wide receivers. You had Jamar Chase owners absolutely desperate for a breakout, and he showed up with 15 catches, 192 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He was outshined by DJ Moore from a scoring perspective on Thursday night, 8 for 230 and 3. DJ Moore breakout, some of us saw coming. Kind of patting myself on the back for that one. It was great to see Jamar Chase, and there was a host of other wide receivers to kind of talk about. George Pickens being another one. I'm just kind of hitting the highlights. But we want to highlight the wide receivers that gave us the most important takeaways from week 5. Wide receivers in Dynasty are kind of the creme de la creme. No matter your scoring format, wide receivers last longer than running backs, and you're always going to start more of them than your quarterbacks, even in a Superflex league. So that being said, we wanted to highlight, I think for me, what this is really coming from is I want to share a little bit where I'm concerned. The storyline you need to pay the most attention to is CeeDee Lamb, only going 4 out of 5 for 49 yards and no touchdowns. And before we kind of dive in to CeeDee Lamb, we're all Cowboys fans. This is probably going to turn into a grief session.
Jeez.
Here's what I want to set the table with. Guys, Adam Thielen in garbage time was able to put up a great fantasy line. The Cowboys got absolutely blown out. If you told me that the Cowboys were going to get blown out, I would have told you, well, at least CeeDee Lamb is going to go off for a lot of points because they're going to be playing catch up. Guys, nothing on the Cowboys offense worked. The Texas Coast offense was Texas toast. It looked awful. I'm panicking not as a Cowboys fan. Thankfully, I don't have any shares of CD. Dylan, I'm asking you not only as a fellow Cowboys fan, but also as a Dak Prescott owner. You are intrinsically tied to paying attention to CeeDee Lamb's performance. What were your thoughts on an underwhelming performance from a wide receiver who's supposed to be the bedrock of so many fantasy teams out there?
Yeah, I hate to see it. I think a lot of the CeeDee Lamb hype is he's a Dallas Cowboy and what this offense could and really should be. But we see this pretty often where CD just kind of disappears. And I think it is a little bit of a Dak Prescott problem. It's a little bit of a coaching and the offense problem. But at the same time, when you have this superstar wide receiver, you want to see glimpses of Jamar Chase. And I'm not saying that he's that caliber player, but you want to see him do something, make something out of nothing, right? And I don't know if CeeDee Lamb is that player. And I think it's time to have that conversation in Dynasty of, for the longest, he's been wide receiver 3 at the lowest wide receiver 5 for a lot of people in Dynasty. So I pose a question to you guys, because I think it's time to start questioning that. Like, is he that? Because is he actually the type of wide receiver that can make something out of nothing? And can he break off these long plays, get open? Can he? I'm not bought into it. And that's hurts me to say as a Cowboys fan, but what are your guys' thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, my issue is the targets. I mean, my whole thing is like, listen, you are in a type of game where you're getting blown out and your best pass catcher was only given 5 targets. What that says to me is, one, Dak only throws to a system. Like, Dak has always been a system QB, but like, he is the definition of what does coach want me to do this play? And whether you like that or love that, it works against really bad teams because that's who the Cowboys have beaten this season. They've beaten Mac Jones, who is probably on his way out of the NFL. They've beaten the Jets without Aaron Rodgers, and then they beat the Giants, who are a dumpster fire. Against good teams, I want to see you hyper-target your best player, and my issue is that if that's not going to happen, the Cowboys down the stretch have some tough games, especially in your fantasy playoffs. And so what I'm saying is I know CeeDee Lamb is going to be like not fine long-term. The tier he's in may change because I think you already said it, Dylan. He's been like wide receiver 3 to 5. Maybe he needs to be wide receiver like 8 to 10. That's maybe a small difference in some people's minds, but I'm just concerned about the offense as a whole because if you're not chucking it up to your best player, you've got problems. Davis, do you concur?
Yeah, I'll say it plainly. He has a Dak Prescott problem. The Cowboys have a Dak Prescott problem. Dylan has a Dak Prescott problem. It is we all have a Dak Prescott problem. You get a Dak Prescott, like we all have that problem.
Yeah.
He is not a good quarterback. We are seeing it time and time again, and I get it, Dan. I get it, Dylan and Josh. You guys are going to say, "Oh, it's the play calling." Dak has proven himself to not be an efficient thrower. And so we have a Dak Prescott problem when we're talking about CeeDee Lamb. I believe CeeDee Lamb actually is that guy. I believe he's an elite wide receiver, but I think he has a quarterback in not a good system. I will acknowledge that. Who's also not a very good quarterback, who's a middle tier quarterback. And if I have him in Dynasty, which you do, Dylan, I would be freaking the hell out because I think his value is only going to go down. And you see on the other end of the ball, Brock Purdy just showing up and he's in a great system. So I say all that to say CeeDee Lamb is not the problem. It's Dak Prescott. And I think the Cowboys are going to have a big decision that they're going to have to make by the end of the year, just like you, Dylan.
How do you get beat 42-10 and your quarterback only throws the ball 24 times? That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Because you don't trust him.
Yeah,
well, that's a problem.
Egregious picks.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
No, really quickly, and since we're already talking about that game and on wide receivers, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy with 4 touchdowns. He's a system QB. The system is working for him and elevating all the pieces around him. If CeeDee Lamb's in such, you're hoping your wide receiver one's like system proof. Would you rather have Brandon Ayuk plus Deebo Samuel plus than CeeDee Lamb down the stretch, Davis? I mean, you're the value king. Is that not?
Absolutely. If I can get Brandon Ayuk in a first for CeeDee Lamb, I am smashing that harder than I could possibly imagine. And I say that.
Not going to touch that. Not going to touch that. Just keep rolling.
Not even again.
I say that because I do think Brandon Ayuk actually might be a better receiver. And that's not a slight at all on CeeDee Lamb, but Brandon Ayuk is an incredible wide receiver who's just been held back by there's so many mouths to feed. But if you can get that paired with a first round pick, just because CeeDee Lamb, as we've said multiple times, is in a tier above him, maybe 2 tiers above him, I am going to live with that and I'm going to run away with that because that's going to be amazing. And on the other end, as we've said, Brock Purdy is the real deal, guys. I'm getting a pie thrown in my face because Brock Purdy is legit the real deal. I've said multiple times, and as I took a victory lap at the beginning of the show, I'm now having to slow down. I'm having to understand and accept that I make mistakes. I'm not perfect, although sometimes I like to think I am. And Brock Purdy is a legit quarterback, and he's a top 10 dynasty quarterback. And I know we're talking about wide receivers here, but I'm going to go on a limb, and I'm going to say Brock Purdy is a top 10 dynasty quarterback just because of that offense, and he's locked in with all of these weapons. And, dude, he's come back and he's shown he's super accurate, and they're going to put him in situations to succeed. So, I just went off on a tangent, but yeah, I'm locked and loaded on Brandon Ayuk in a first for CeeDee Lamb.
I'm stoked that you did because you put yourself in a real, like what's the word? You perjured yourself because before the season you said that Brock Purdy was going to, Trey Lance was still there. You're like, Trey Lance is going to replace Brock Purdy or they're going to bring in someone else. Yeah. 5 weeks later, Brock Purdy, QB1. Give me Brandon Ayuk in a first over CeeDee Lamb, the perennial wide receiver one.
I move as the markets move.
The value king, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Moving as the markets move is the definitely what's going on. Just before we leave CeeDee Lamb, here's really why I'm concerned, or something you should pay attention to. If you're chasing a championship this season, his last 3 games for fantasy playoffs are Buffalo, Miami, Detroit. The Cowboys seem to put up fantasy points when they play bad teams. As of right now, those 3 teams aren't bad teams. Those are very, very good teams. If the offense can't keep pace with these better teams, you might want to consider a trade like Davis had talked about. And Davis, I'll go to you now. What wide receiver situation are you kind of paying the most attention to after week 5?
Yeah, this one is near and dear to me because, he's on my team. He's going to stay on my team for the foreseeable future unless somebody wants to send me a great trade for him. But I want to talk about Jordan Addison. Guys, I think he is the real deal. And if it was not for Puka Nacua being actually legit, I would say he was the wide receiver 1 in this rookie class, but he's going to be the wide receiver 2 because Puka is legit. Jordan Addison, guys. Justin Jefferson, the word just came out, pulled his hamstring late in the game. And then practice report today said it was getting evaluated. Then they came to say they're not going to rush him back on the field. And it's highly unlikely that Justin Jefferson will play this week. So wheels up on Jordan Addison. Sure, you can say KJ Osborne. Sure, you can say TJ Hawkinson. But I don't think either of those guys, dynasty situations or values, is going to rise whether they have the production. But if Jordan Addison, first-round draft capital, who's been not struggling to get on the field, but they're not really featuring him, but in the limited work that he's done, he scored 3 touchdowns already on the season. He looks impressive on the field, and now they're going to unleash him. So for me, I'm looking at Jordan Addison, and if he comes out and has an explosive game, I think you can see a guy whose value is going to skyrocket to top 12 in keep trade cut. Like I think there's a legitimate chance if he comes out and puts up a 8 for 91 and a touchdown. And yes, I know Justin Jefferson's eventually going to come back, but you can buy into the guy's like value right now. So Dylan, I'm just curious. I know it might sound crazy, but do you think Jordan Addison actually has an opportunity to move himself into the back end of like the wide receiver ones when it comes to dynasty keep trade cut? Or am I crazy and am I just a homer because he's on my team?
No, you're actually not crazy on this one. Listen, if Puka Nacua can do it, then Jordan Addison will absolutely do it. Listen, from day one, I have said, if you listen to way back in the day, our internal pods, I've said that Jordan Addison was the most pro-ready wide receiver in this class. He reminded me a lot of, not because of the speed or anything, but he reminded me a lot of Chris Olave from last year, where last year Chris Olave was not the best receiver, but he was the most pro-ready coming out. And so Addison, slow getting on the field, I don't think that has anything to do with his talent. I think that's how the Vikings do things. The same thing happened with Justin Jefferson, right? Justin Jefferson's gone. Addison is about to pop off. I absolutely think he's going to smash. I think he's already earned the trust to get those targets from Kirk Cousins, and we know that they don't want to run the ball in Minnesota. They can't run the ball in Minnesota because oftentimes they're playing from behind in Minnesota. So what are they going to do? They're going to throw the ball. Jordan Addison will most likely be the number one option. We'll see how that goes with Hawkinson, but I think Addison will be the number one option. And so I would, if this was all aboard, overboard, I am all aboard on Jordan Addison being a wide receiver one. Well, as long as Justin Jefferson's out, I think he'll be a wide receiver one.
I want to play devil's advocate just a little on this one. I'm so sorry. Someone's got to be reasonable. Someone's got to be the adult in the room. Does Jordan Addison not benefit from single coverage because Justin Jefferson's on the field? You know, we thought as one of the most famous like ADP dynasty like nightmare stories for players was when Juju Smith-Schuster had that 1,400-yard season when Antonio Brown was still there, right? And so I'm just trying to pump the brakes maybe a little bit on like, hey, it sounds great to like get the bulkhead of the targets, but there was plenty of targets to go around. KJ Osborne, I think, was still getting way too many targets. I just wanted Jordan Addison to absorb those and Justin Jefferson to stay on the field. My thought is that Justin Jefferson being off the field is going to make the offense as a whole bad. It could draw better coverage to Jordan Addison. I think it actually could slow him down. Well, I'm not against Jordan Addison as a player. I think he's an incredible route runner. He's got great hands, and he's very, very fast. I'm not so sure that Justin Jefferson being gone, whether it's for 1 week or 5 weeks, is going to be good for his long-term value. Davis, can you at least see a world where Jordan Addison is slowed down by additional defense? Or is it just everything in the Davis's mind is wheels up, he's on my team, you know, he's going to the moon?
Well, yeah, that. And two, you lost me when you said Juju Smith-Schuster. So as soon as you said Juju, I did not hear a single word you said after that. So yes, no, I'm sorry you're going through that. I'm not too sure what to say about that. But Jordan Addison wheels up to the moon, baby.
Hey, people forget how high the dynasty community as a whole was on Juju after 2 really good early seasons in his career. Dylan, I want to move to you. What wide receiver situation, it looks like, were you paying the most attention to on Sunday?
Yeah, ironically, this wasn't planned. This guy's on my team. So, of course, I'm going to tout him. Davis, the guy that I'm going to compare him to and say that he is going to finish higher than is on your team. And that guy, to me, is a guy that I've been touting from day one, Christian Kirk. I think Christian Kirk is going to be a locked and loaded high-end wide receiver too. And here's why. In the last few weeks, we've seen the first week, he started off slow. And then that's when Calvin Ridley had his big game, right? Yeah. Since then, we saw 14 targets, 8 targets, 12 targets, another 8 or 9 targets. Like, he's getting consistent targets now. Christian Kirk, that is. We were just talking about Christian Kirk, that is. We've seen him get those targets. And even this past week, we saw Ridley had one of those boom games, but it seems like he's going to be very highly boom or bust. I think Christian Kirk is going to continue to maintain that 12 to 11 point, and then he's going to have those boom weeks where he does go off for 20 plus. And so he's earning those targets. I see him actually finding a role for himself in that offense over Calvin Ridley. And Christian Kirk is the 1A. Calvin Ridley is the 1B. I know you hate to hear that, Davis, and I'll let you go here in a second. But for me, Christian Kirk, I'm okay if he's my wide receiver too. I'm not saying have him as your wide receiver 1, but if you can get it's like Jakobi Myers. It's the same argument you had for Jakobi Myers. Yeah. He's seeing the targets and he's playing with the points. So you can't argue with that.
No, Wow, this is rare. This is an accomplishment, and we have grown a lot. And I hope that the viewers and the listeners can understand that. Dylan, you're right. I as much as it pains me to say that, you are right, and I actually acknowledge that in our group chat. So I'm glad that you stole my material to bring it to the show. So next time, I want your sources cited. I want a works cited page.
Did you really say that? I honestly didn't see that.
So great. That doesn't make me feel hurt at all. So it's totally fine. No, I actually do.
On his shoulder.
I am so upset right now. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think Christian Kirk, he is solidified. He's going to get the targets that he's going to get. I don't think his role is at all going to be impacted by Calvin Ridley. And I was completely wrong saying that it was, because I think that it is solidified and established that he and Evan Ingram are going to be running out of the slot, and they're going to be moving Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones all around the field on the outside and really sending them down the field. But we're starting to see Trevor Lawrence is comfortable hitting the short routes. Trevor Lawrence is comfortable taking the first down instead of shooting it down the field every single time. But I will say on the flip side, I am happy to see Calvin Ridley actually catch some of those deep balls that in the first couple of weeks he was struggling to catch. Like it seemed like it was just outside of his hands. He was just missing a touchdown here or there. But no, I do agree. Christian Kirk is the first read. Evan Ingram sometimes might be the second read, but then Calvin Ridley is going to have valuable targets down the field but it's going to present you a boom or bust opportunity on a weekly basis. So I'm sad to say Calvin Ridley is not going to be a wide receiver one this year, and I'm a little bummed to say that, guys.
This is baffling. Davis, I thought you and I were going to be teaming up on this one. I thought you were going to be taking a victory.
Convince me.
No, I mean, first and foremost, Ridley had the better game. Can we just talk about that? He was 7 for 122 versus 6 for 78. Let's start with that. Here's the most important part of it, though. I want you guys to think back to the fourth quarter, how close that game was. Buffalo had gotten back into it. It was back and forth. That huge 3rd and 4 play with 3 minutes and 15 seconds left. It was, what do they always say? You go to your best player on 3rd down. Who did they go to? They went to Calvin Ridley. That was the 32-yard big play catch that he had. Calvin Ridley didn't have a head start on working with Christian Kirk. I believe that Calvin Ridley is starting to assert himself as the 1A in this offense, and Christian Kirk, while still valuable in the slot, and certainly if you were in a redraft league or even a dynasty league, you probably got a value on Christian Kirk when you traded for him or acquired him because everyone was over concerned about Calvin Ridley. But I think Calvin Ridley's season is just now beginning. It takes time to build in-game rapport. Davis is moving as the market's app. He's completely changed teams.
He's just going to flip just like that. Josh, that is such a stretch. Listen, I don't understand how just because he's had 2 good games and this one recent game was good, that you're going to say that he's going to be the wide receiver 1. When we've seen it from Christian Kirk, not only last year, but this year, pick up right where he left off. And
Calvin Ridley wasn't there.
I'm saying from day one, until Calvin Ridley can prove that he's the number 1 option, Christian Kirk is the number 1. Like it hasn't taken away from any of Christian Kirk's production.
Well, no, listen, that's a different conversation. But you said that Kirk was the 1A and Ridley was the 1B. I don't think he is, man.
So T. Higgins has a better game than Jamar Chase twice, and he's the 1A.
If you are comparing Christian Kirk to Jamar Chase, your entire argument is like, that's all I need to say. Christian Kirk has always been a great slot wide receiver, not game changing. Calvin Ridley's ceiling is so much higher, and in most league formats, I get the age issue. You want that. I'd rather have a boomer bust receiver who's going to win me a week and then have, decent weeks than a receiver who's going to be kind of steady Eddie, 10-ish points every week. Give me the guy who's going to win me weeks. Give me the guy who's going to win me weeks.
They're both wide receiver 2s.
Yeah, so we're talking about wide receivers being on the same team. Guys, especially Dylan, I need to bring up Puka Nacua because, Dylan, you have been hating on our man. No, you've been hating on him, and I need to do this for Mike. I need Mike to feel like he is avenged right now. Like I need him to feel validated. I need him to feel avenged and stood up for it because you have crapped on Puka Nacua for so long and you have not acknowledged that he's actually going to be a value. No.
I have not crapped on him.
You have.
No.
This is you being guilty of murder, Dylan being the accomplice, and then you telling the police he did it. He's the one you
literally. What did I just walk into?
I'll pick it back up.
No, you said he was Travis Fulgham. Please continue. I acknowledge my wrongs. Remember.
I acknowledge my wrongs. Here is the timeline. I compared him to Travis Fulgham. He proved me otherwise. I move as the markets move. I pivoted. I adjusted. Dylan did not. I am here now, Dylan, to ask you, are you ready to adjust now that Puka Nacua, with Cooper Kupp back and Cooper Kupp looking like the Cooper Kupp of old, Puka Nacua still got 11 targets, 7 receptions, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Are you ready to pivot and to be all aboard that he is by far, the dynasty wide receiver 1 out of this draft class, and that he is a top 12 dynasty wide receiver? Are you ready to acknowledge that? And are you ready to say that a 24 first is not enough for him?
Okay. There's 8 different questions in there, but I'll answer.
You better answer it, damn it.
I'll answer as many as I can remember. The first question, you said something along the lines of, do I think that he has he validated his value to this point? Is he the wide receiver 1 in this class to this point? Absolutely. To this point, he's proven me wrong consistently. I don't care. I'm doubling down. I don't think that he's going to finish that way. Cooper Kupp's first game back, sure. Puka had the touchdown. Outside of that, we're not talking about Puka. If Puka just even has the 71 yards or whatever, if he doesn't have a touchdown, people they're worried. I can guarantee you they're worried. If he doesn't have a touchdown. 11
targets? With 11 targets? 70 for 71?
Yes, listen, I don't think people actually pay attention to targets as much as they should. People would be worried if he didn't have the fantasy points to back it. If Cooper Kupp came back and he saw his fantasy points go down, people would not be nearly as high doubling down on their praise for him. So that's where I'm at. It was Puka.
Good thing is he didn't. Good thing is he still produced fantasy points, and he still.
Cooper Kupp's first game back. I still think it was Cooper Kupp's offense. So I don't think that Puka Nacua is going to continue to keep this up. I think he's a good receiver. I never said he was trash. I never came out here and called him Travis Fulgham. I said he's a good receiver
at some point or another.
No, this is an unbelievable
I literally
switch.
Just got
Davis
so
absolutely cut a deal with the feds and completely pinned all of the Puka Nacua hate on Dylan. Davis was beating the drum for Puka Nacua being such a butt, since day one, has been trying to trade for him.
One week.
Puka, to wrap up what I was saying, I do not think that Puka Nacua will finish as you said a dynasty wide receiver 1. Absolutely not. Not by the end of the season will he be a dynasty wide receiver 1. Maybe a wide receiver 2 because it won't fall up that much probably. But that is just asinine.
He's currently wide receiver 12 on Keep Trade Cut.
I know, that's crazy. That is crazy. Absolutely not.
I mean, his long-term value, this was a big litmus test. With Cooper Kupp coming back and him still being productive, we wondered, was this going to be the 2021 Rams where Cooper Kupp was the king and no one else really had anything until Odell Beckham kind of showed up at the end of the year? Or was this going to return to the Sean McVay offense days of old where you had a Robert Woods and a Cooper Kupp earlier in the career, a Sammy Watkins and a Robert Woods? I think that for most fantasy owners, the first week back with Cooper Kupp is going to cement itself the most in their minds. They're going to take this as the carbon copy. Even if he has a bad game next week, they're like, well, we've already seen it work. If he had stumbled out the gate, if it had been a bad week out the gate, we would have been like, well, this is Cooper Kupp's offense. I think he saved his value from a public perception standpoint. But yeah, you got to wonder, if JSN gets going at the end of the season. Dylan, you said it all the time. Be patient with your rookies. Be patient with your rookies. JSN, QJ, I know he's very unpopular. He's another person that could get cooking late. He certainly has the opportunity with Mike Williams being out. There's plenty of debate still to be had because the season still has a lot of weeks left, thank goodness, because I am just craving more football. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to go below deck with all of the newest drama and trades going on in the greatest league on earth. Welcome back in to probably America's favorite segment at this point because it's talking about the greatest fantasy league on earth. Gentlemen, the Yacht Club, it's starting to take shape. Okay, the first 2 weeks, those could be kind of flukes. Certain teams are really starting to make a push and look like long-term contenders. Others, surprisingly, are tanking a little bit early. Dylan, you famously were supposed to be one of the better teams, and we've talked a little bit about it. You've underachieved. How good did it feel to get your first win this week? Because I got my first win as an openly tanking team. It felt great. It felt good.
I can't catch a break. Why am I getting my term dunked on so frequently here? I don't understand. It feels great to get my first win, by the way. Thank you so much.
1-4, baby.
1-4. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. Just because you're 0-4 does not mean you're out of it. Although I am. That was with intention, right? I'm slowly rebuilding my team. but that's just where we're at. We got to win. I won with 60 points. I put up 60 points and got a W this week.
You didn't have to tell on yourself that way. You didn't have
Listen,
to.
I have to tell the full story. I can't just say I won. That's pretty embarrassing.
I won with 180 points.
Bravo.
You're so cool, dude.
You're so cool.
I know.
I want to be like you when I grow up.
So, Dylan, and I just want to readdress this. You are tanking or not tanking productive struggle without your first rounder in 2024. So Correct. You'll probably have best get maybe 4 wins. How is that a smart move? And how is that wise? Tell the listeners how you are playing smart dynasty football.
Yeah, I actually will explain that regardless of your facetious comments. That question was absolutely garbage. So the reason why I'm doing a productive struggle is that we've talked about this multiple times. All of the first round picks are on lock in our league. Like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to go trade all of my team to go get a first round pick that I'm not going to turn my team around with 1 pick. So I'm doing a productive struggle. I have 7 seconds. At some point, I'm going to be able to do something with those seconds. So whether it's the off season and people get rookie fever, whatever it is, I can start to make moves then. I just have to play the slow game. And that's what I committed to, because what's the point in trying to go up against guys that are scoring 180 plus when I was barely scraping 120 with my best team? So I just realized, like, why would I hold on to these older volatile players, running backs, older wide receivers, guys like that, when I can trade them for picks and at least start the rebuild slowly? That is the whole philosophy behind my productive struggle.
I feel like every single fantasy owner probably wants like the ability to go back and just undo a single trade. Dylan, we've talked at length in other episodes about the Christian McCaffrey trade, but how different would this feel again if you hadn't have traded your first away for Derek Carr? Because I'll tell you, there's some. I wish I had not. I did a pick swap earlier in the season, trading away several 24 firsts to get more 25 firsts. It was like I got an extra first and 2 seconds out of it. So I was like, let me do the deal. But I regret that trade. Davis, we know what Dylan regrets. Is there been a trade? I know your team's flying high. If you could go back in the offseason, because everything in the preseason, every team's going to be great. Obviously, a lot of your takes have changed. But if you could redo any trade you did, was there one that sticks out to you now that we're in season in week 5?
Oh, yeah. And it involves the guy that I was talking about in this episode, who's now a top 10 dynasty quarterback. I had Brock Purdy on my team. I'm pretty sure a lot of people in our league this summer had Brock Purdy on their teams because I
had Brock Purdy. Yeah.
He was getting thrown around like a hot potato. Yeah. He was making his way around. But that kind of speaks to the point of why I did not feel safe with having him on my team with Trey Lance coming back. But here's the deal.
Dylan just got it. You alluded to the fact that Brock Purdy was like a homie hopper. And Brock, we want you to know we don't think of you that way. We just didn't value you.
I'm not even laughing at the homie hopper.
The right way.
I'm laughing at the fact that Davis, I'm just laughing because he made the take about Trey Lance coming in and being worried about Trey Lance and squandered away Brock Purdy because he was worried about Trey Lance. I just think that's hilarious. I did. Yeah. And then goes on to just completely flip his take. And anyways, that's.
Yeah. And I didn't catch the once again, I will reiterate, I move as the markets move. That is what the Value King does. And that's why my team's 5-0.
So what's the validity in what you say?
Because it's informed with the markets.
Okay.
Done. Gotcha. Put to rest. So here's what I did. I had Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Justin Fields. Middle of the year, had done some deals. It was like, you know what? I don't need 3 quarterbacks, so let me liquidate Justin Fields. Traded Justin Fields for Brock Purdy, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Michael Mayer, and 2 seconds. And at the time, it felt great. But my third quarterback just did not feel secure. Trey Lance buzz was coming back. He was coming back. Brock Purdy, is he going to return to the same guy? Who knows, or who knew he actually returned better? He's now like a robot because the surgery they did, he is robotic and he is a perfect quarterback now. And so all that being said, I do regret that because that literally was the perfect tear down. Whereas I could have stuck with that trade and not freaked out and got worried about Brock Purdy. So the trade that I regret is then taking Brock Purdy and adding a first rounder to then go get CJ Stroud and then having buyer's remorse on Justin Fields and taking CJ Stroud and another first and another second and Baker Mayfield to then get Justin Fields back. I wanted to have a piece. So guys, all that being said, I move way too fast sometimes. I make some terrible decisions because I have buyer's remorse. And in hindsight, that trade absolutely sucked because I should have just stood pat with getting 2 young wide receivers that are studs, a young tight end, and Brock Purdy, and have that as my third quarterback. Because then I ended up getting Justin Fields, which felt like a ticking time bomb, and then I had to move off very quickly.
Would you not do CJ Stroud? Or sorry, would you say Brock Purdy in a first for CJ Stroud? You wouldn't do that.
I should have stopped right there. No, I should have stopped right there.
Okay.
My concern with that, and the reason why I did that trade, and it's funny, Mike knew exactly why I did that trade, because Mike had more interest in CJ Stroud than he did Brock Purdy at the time. So I did that trade to get CJ Stroud, to then piece him, to put him alongside the first, which was Mike's first, to then get Justin Fields back. So hey, guys, it just... The offseason is long. It's a long offseason.
Here's what I hear. It works. We are all the style of player. You guys a little bit more so than me, now that I've committed to a long-term strategy of I'm open for any deal any day. And we like that our league has a lot of that. We have, Lord Almighty.
You have a 5 to 10 year plan. You have a 5 to 10 year plan.
I do. And well, you've made it quicker.
Roth for your
no, you moved up the window by not being able to hold Justin Fields for more than 3 bad games. So thank you. It's a little bit quicker moving. But no, I would just say that the lesson in all of that is if you don't have players who you can plant your flag on, you can move as the markets move all you want, but unless you have stable pieces around some of those moves, it's just going to all fall through, because in a lot of ways, Dylan's the opposite example of that. Davis, you loved Dylan's team going into the season. I thought Dylan's team was a playoff team going into the season. You can just swing and miss. So Davis, I want to come back to you really quickly. Is there any player on your roster that is actually untradeable? Is there any person who emotionally you're a little bit more that you could? I'm wondering if there's loyalty in there somewhere in that cold heart that's just moving as the markets move. Is there any player on your roster that it's at the very least unreasonable to try to come get him for you?
Well, I would say Christian McCaffrey, just from the standpoint of I need him to win a championship. But from an emotional standpoint, from somebody that is near and dear to my heart, it's got to be Bijan Robinson. And this has come from a guy that has Pat Mahomes on his team. But I literally tanked and I sold an entire season out with a competitive roster so I could get this guy on my team. So there literally is there's something that is attached to I've got this guy on my team. I literally just paid however much our buy-in is to just tank the entire season and then pivot in the middle of the season, act like I'm going to compete just to piss Josh off. And then ended up tanking again, and I got Bijan. So it absolutely worked, and I know it did. He tilted, and it benefited Dylan. So Dylan, you're welcome. Thank you. There's not a price that somebody could pay to get Bijan off my roster, just because there is an emotional attachment. I would say anybody else on my team is for sale, but I have to see Bijan become who I think he can be, or else me tanking that entire season was literally just a waste, and I don't want to live with that.
Dylan, I want to ask you, because you've joined me. I mean, you're actively rebuilding. You're not tanking. But Davis just mentioned it. The player that he loves the most is someone he tanked for, right? He took all the time in the world. It was this alluring muse. He eventually won. You've gotten very defensive about this term called blind tanking. You criticized me in 25 because you're just like collecting picks that I don't have a name associated to the pick. Mm-hmm. Is that what you mean when you criticize me by saying it's blind tanking?
Yeah. So are you guys watch Netflix? Are you guys familiar with the TV show Love is Blind?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good show.
No?
Good show.
Yeah. It's basically people fall in love through a wall. That's Josh with his picks. He's literally talking, getting to know these picks and these players that he has no idea what they look like, who they are, and he's falling in love with them. All for no reason, because we don't even know who that's going to be, right? That's your biggest argument. However, what I will say is that's one of that to me. I like college, so the prospects in 25 don't look so hot to me. So you're building around a class that doesn't have a lot of upside, but you yourself, you don't know any college football players. So my question to you would be, what you blind tanking? Wow. What are you tanking for? Like, what is your hope? Are you hoping to, and be transparent here? I know I'm going to expose your strategy a little bit. Totally. But do you want to flip those picks? Or are you going to make every single one of those picks?
Well, I want to answer your question.
No. Actually, let me ask you one more. Let me ask you a clearer question. Who are you tanking for?
Specifically?
Yeah.
Is there anyone? I don't need one player. I have multiple firsts. I'm tanking for an entire long-term play here.
Okay.
It's leverage on a class. But I want to answer your question. I have seen Love is Blind, And falling in love through the wall is not the point of the show, Dylan. The point of being on Love is Blind, that doesn't usually end in happy marriages. It's to get clout and fame and leverage so you can go on every other reality show. I'm a little bit aware of what happens in Love is Blind. I acted like I didn't. These people hop from show to show. And
this
they
man
just
is looking at Google. Love is Blind.
Literally, he's got YouTube in the background watching it.
Because listen, they don't want that. This is a complete side note. They do not want healthy relationships. You don't set up an entire camera production to watch someone meet someone else at a coffee shop to break up a relationship and say that the show's about finding love. The show's about creating characters for people to hate because they're unhealthy emotionally. And guess what?
So you're deterring the question. You're deterring the question.
I'm saying if the goal of Love is Blind is to get leverage to turn into a long-term career, to turn one show into 2 shows to 3 shows, that's what I'm doing with my picks, baby. You just get me into 25 where it's lights, camera, action, and I'm the only show in town. You have to come trade with me. I'm going to leverage that in to 2026, maybe 2027. I'm going to build up a snowball of capital, all because America fell in love with me in an unhealthy way because I was the center of attention, which obviously I learned from Davis, who did his best job to be that tonight, and it was quite entertaining. Guys, I think that's all the time we have. This next week, we're going to be going below deck further than ever before. We're going to be releasing a special episode in conjunction with the launch of our website. If you want to fall in love with our league even more and dive deep into every single roster, into every single character, we're going to have that opportunity for you. But until that time, Jordan Love, please do something this next week to recoup your value. This has been the Dynasty Exchange. Thank you so much for tuning in.